My name is Robert Hooijberg. I'm a professor at IMD. I've been here for more than 20 years. And today I want to talk to you about how to leverage a crisis to create breakthroughs. So take a bit of a positive perspective on all of the things that have been happening over the last 12 months as we go through. And I'm going to take the liberty to both, provide you with some content around this topic and also to introduce you to one of our key programs, the Breakthrough Program for Senior Executives, which I direct. Before we get started, one of the things that has happened because of the pandemic, I was teaching in Singapore and Hong Kong this week without ever traveling there. And you're probably familiar with the concept now. So every day I was here at 6:30 because of the 7-hour time difference, teaching from 6:30 to 10:30, including today. And one of the nice things is it's very quiet on the road when you bike to work. But also what is really nice, you get to see the sun come up. And that was the view from the 3rd floor where I was teaching in a little studio like the one that I'm in now. And that was the view. So that also, makes the day a little bit brighter, a little bit more beautiful, even if you have to get up that early. All right, that's a little bit of a side note. What we're going to do is going to go through this presentation. Sadly, the medium doesn't quite allow us for a lot of interaction, at least not verbal interaction, but you can use the Q&A function. And my colleague Stefan Attias will be monitoring that. And as you see them, you can also say, hey, well, that's a good question, or I really like that question, so that when Stefan interrupts, he can give the votes or the questions with the most votes. And my colleague Karina, she is monitoring the chat. So if you have comments in the chat, once in a while I'll look to her, she's sitting to my left, and see what the comments are. That's the best way we can do the kind of interactions that I like in this particular medium. Normally, of course, I would prefer to have much more of a dialogue with you as we go forward. All right, so that's for the start. One of the things, as I said, I've been in this business for a long time, and you remember this concept called the VUCA world, living in a VUCA world, leading in a VUCA world, which is about volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. I don't know about you, but I thought what these words meant, but clearly, when you look at the last 12 months, you really start to understand what these concepts mean. Things are constantly in movement, uncertain what happens, things change every day, lots of ambiguity. What do you do in this type of environment? That's where we also came up with the title. From a positive perspective, how do you take advantage of a crisis? And let me start with just kind of like a fun question. Who was responsible for the digital transformation of your company? Your digital officer, your chief digital officer, your CEO, or COVID-19? Julia, you're very fast. Shafan, D, there's no option D, although maybe that's what M. Kaufman means by all three. And the guess, of course, that says all three is probably the most correct answer, but you have to ask yourself the impact of COVID-19 on changes in the company, because that's the crisis, basically, we had to confront over the last 12 months as we go forward. And Robert, yes, COVID responsible for the speed, and maybe a little bit more than the speed as well. You may have heard this saying, never let a good crisis go to waste. And that's putting a positive perspective on it. I'm not sure how the airlines would take this particular statement, or the hotels. There are some parts of the businesses that have really been hurt. But for many other businesses, there has also been an opportunity to maybe create some new value, some new interesting ideas. So that's the part I want to focus on first. And I don't know about you, but we've seen a lot of innovation and a lot of resilience also of people and of businesses in dealing with this crisis. I want to pick up the concept of innovation first, what we have seen, what has been coming forward. So where have we seen innovation? We've seen innovation, I think, at least in 3 areas. In the running of the current business, in also developing new businesses, and of course, especially in the way of working. And we'll give you an opportunity to contribute to each of these 3, but let me give you some thoughts first to stimulate your thinking. Innovation in the current business, right? Hopefully, like us, you have taken an opportunity for the crisis to also maybe clean up a whole bunch of things. I would call that innovation as well. Maybe there's some useless processes, products, And heaven forbid, maybe there's some clients or services that we should not be serving anymore. So, and I think, when you think about managing cash flow, when you want to make sure you have the right profits and the right business model, the crisis kind of forces you to say, the parts that are maybe not that good for the business and clean up. And then there have been new ways of doing business that have been emerging. And the question is, which of those do you need to keep? And lots of changes has happened. And I'll give you some examples here. The big one, of course, is Zoom, WebEx, WebEx Trainer, all the other platforms, Microsoft Teams. You're probably all sick and tired of it at this point, right? But it's definitely a phenomenal, alternative to the face-to-face meetings compared to the past. Do you see my colleague Ina Tugel? She's teaching there in one of these little rooms like I am in, and still connecting to participants all over the world. This is, of course, one of the huge benefits that we have seen. We can reach out without travel. We can connect without travel. We can have really meaningful dialogue without travel as well. On the right-hand side, this kind of represents more the meetings that we have been holding, that you have been holding as you work from home as well. So lots of ways of doing the running business. We at IMD, we also have experimented with lots of things, not all things that we've been using. One of the concepts that we started to do early on is redesign the classroom, because we were still, of course, in March and April, hopeful that we would continue while, monitoring social distancing. And here we converted one of our classrooms in 2x2 squares. And actually some people liked it because they now had their nice private space in the classroom as well. Then, of course, we started thinking, oh my God, we need to be clear about face masks, but with a face mask, how can you teach? So then some people came up with the concept of the face shields. Here's my colleague Alison Meister demonstrating, the wear of the face shield as a way, being able to teach in face-to-face environments. I don't think that was a big success as we go forward. The one that was a big success is basically these plexiglass designs that you've probably seen in a lot of your pharmacies, a lot of your stores, and even in some of the restaurants. That one actually is a concept that has worked quite well, and we've implemented quite a bit with our MBA program and our executive MBA programs as well. So for us, it was a lot of trial and error. I'm sure you had some of the same experiences on your end as well. And then, of course, hopefully this has stimulated you also to think through what kind of new business is possible that now that we're forced to work in a different way. And when you think about new business, don't just think about new products and new services. Although the plexiglass guys, they must be making a killing over these last couple of months. But also, what new services could there be? What new business models can you have? What new clients could you reach? And also, how do you deliver value maybe in a new way with partners in a different type of ecosystem? And let me give you my favorite example. I come from Holland, and the people from Holland, I saw a couple of people from Holland on the call, even from Brabant, the province where I'm from. This is a greenhouse. Now, what is a greenhouse used for? What is a greenhouse used for? Maybe some of the Dutch folks can quickly let us know. Growing plants in the winter, tomatoes, fruits, flowers. Create tropics in cold climates. That's a nice way to put it. Alexis, thank you for promoting Holland for the tulips. Absolutely. Right. The question is, think about COVID, create your own microclimate. Yes. Actually, Quing, you need to keep that one in mind as well. Dependency on import. Very good, Daniel. All right, so lots of good ideas coming up on why we use greenhouses. Basically, it is to make fruits and vegetables available, in this case to the Dutch population, also for export or for the flowers, regardless of the season outside. That's the concept of the microclimate. And like Quing, also in terms of being less dependent on less dependent on imports. And it was a good suggestion when you send your message, send it to all participants, not just to the panelists, so you can see what I'm seeing as well. Now, what do you think of this? I thought it was so creative. Here, what one of the restaurants in Holland did, yes, Tarja, one of the restaurants did, they created these little greenhouses, in this case, not to grow vegetables, but to provide COVID-safe dining experiences while maintaining social distance and other hygiene measures. And I was actually thinking, and the reason that I said it's both for current and new business, especially in a climate like Holland, now you can actually eat outside regardless of the weather, which is quite important for the Dutch climate. So also I was thinking, if you want to have a romantic dinner, this is quite a nice solution compared to the old one, where often you have people around you that can join in your conversation, which doesn't make it totally private or romantic. So I thought that was actually quite interesting, these types of innovation. And I want you to think about, what has happened in your business? What kind of creative ideas have your people come up with that you had never thought about? And they could be taking something like a greenhouse and reconceptualizing its purpose to meet the demands and the challenges of today. That's really what I want you to think about, right? How do we create these types of innovations? What are the preconditions for that? How, from a leadership perspective, do you get people to go in that direction to create these opportunities? I'm sure a lot of people also got depressed, but how do you get this kind of opportunity? I'm also very proud from IMD perspective that we made a lot of changes, including all these rooms, Zoom rooms we call them. But one of the things, our biggest program that we run each year is called Orchestrating Winning Performance, a program where 400 to 500 people come to the IMD campus for a 1-week program. And you can only imagine the incredible energy that brings to the campus, but also to the participants who are here. We took that fully online. We call it live virtual. And the amazing thing, it's been an incredible success. People have been very impressed with the connections they can make, the breakout rooms, the chat rooms, the cafes, the virtual cafes, and to really kind of replicate and in a sense even make easier access to this type of experience. And that is a new business model. It's a new invention using, of course, an old concept in a new way. And that was, of course, tremendous technical challenge and tremendous pedagogical challenge, but that's one of the things we took on as a way of doing that. Now, I started with the running business and I started with new business because I thought the most common one that you're all familiar with is innovations in the way of working. And that, I think, is one of the really most interesting ones. Of course, I'm biased because I'm a professor of leadership. But in terms of the ways of working, working from home, I must say, like many of you probably, the only time I used to think about IT was when things were not working. Not very nice, but when things are working, you kind of take it for granted. I think IT at IMD, I think IT at almost any business that you're part of, have done a phenomenal job of transferring the way of working to home and making the technology available and possible to do that. So my compliments, if there's anybody from IT on the call, great job in making this all happen, working with the technology. In our case also, all the different clients. I'm working with Microsoft Teams, WebEx, WebEx Trainer, Zoom, and other platforms to really, get these connections done. Then, of course, we started realizing when we're doing this, and we're constantly in these Zoom meetings behind these little screens, we're losing the social aspects of the connections. And then people started inventing virtual coffees, virtual wine tasting, lunches. For one of the programs, I know one of the managers sent his favorite bottle of wine to all the members on his team, and then they enjoyed that together, and they exchanged, how they tasted and how much they liked it. I've seen a lot of innovation also in people joining. I had one guy on a program, he became the leader of a team and never met his team face to face, only virtual, and it started working that way. But I've seen great innovations in, virtual tours, virtual connections, and also, sadly, for, of course, saying goodbye to people who retire, who leave, and sometimes had to be let go. And again, it's also all the technologies, of course, play a major role in that. Just to kind of give you a sense of, what's happening using quite a few of the IMD examples. But let's keep in mind that innovation isn't just about changing content. It's also a process. And of course, one of the things you really have to think about when you think about innovation is how can we do this in a virtual world? Now, if you think in a face-to-face world, right? And if you think about innovation and creativity, we think about brainstorming. We think about making sure we have diversity in terms of participants by like having cross-functional teams, or challenging ourselves by having benchmarks that look out of reach, but we want to get there, or ideas that are completely unrelated, at least at first glance, to what we're trying to do. Trying out new things, doing experimentation, doing pilots, and interacting with different parts of the ecosystem. And I guess most of us are only used to this in a face-to-face world. And why is that? Because when you're in a face-to-face world, we can see the total person. We can see his or her reactions in all senses, whether it's from what they say, what their facial expressions are like, maybe even the feel and the touch of them, the encouragement, the withdrawing, and the smell of it. Now, the smell of it may be one part that we don't miss too much, but you can think of it more symbolically as the smell of the place, the smell of the atmosphere, and what it does when we're all together. And when we have these interactions and we build on each other's ideas, it brings a lot of energy, and you get quick feedback and quick building on ideas. I think that's kind of the concept of innovation, creativity in a normal setting. But I must say, as I started studying this and looking at it, what people did, there are some real advantages to doing innovation, creativity in a virtual world. What I try to highlight with this picture that you see is the access that you now have to experts regardless of where they are in the world. For example, right now we have people from all over the world, from Brazil to Taipei. That must be like 13, 14 time zones. When you do innovation, it's not like we have to wait for everybody to come here and travel long distances and many hours. We can actually bring someone in from Taipei for 2 hours. We can bring someone in from Brazil for 3 hours. And we can get their ideas, we can brainstorm and do that. The other big thing that in the virtual world, what I've been noticing is that there's many more opportunities for people who may traditionally be more in an out group. In other words, not the favorites of the particular boss or leader, or the introverts, to interact in ways that are more comfortable for them. That's why I give you the smiley face. We can do a quick check. Are you happy where this is going or not? We use the chat. We can do that very quickly to get ideas for people who are not as likely to speak up. And there's different voting tools to say, okay, hey, do you like Karina's idea? Do you like Stefan's idea? Do you like Robert's ideas? Which one do you like best? And that's a huge improvement, because I think sometimes one of the downsides in a face-to-face brainstorming session is that the loudest voices dominate, or the one who repeats him or herself the most dominates. Here there's opportunities to calibrate much better what people really think and what they want to do. And the other thing, which is quite amazing when you think about it, how quickly then there are machine learning and artificial intelligence programs that can help us understand what is actually happening really. So tools like Humanize or Gong or Riff, a lot of them coming from the kind of startup nation Israel. We visited actually Gong in February, right before it went into shutdown. They actually take these virtual connections, these virtual interactions, and they analyze them to see what works, what doesn't work, who gets followed, who does not get followed. So we can actually see what's really working in our dynamics that usually we do not have access to in our face-to-face world. So there are advantages to doing innovation in that virtual world. We'll come back to that, because there's one important element that's really difficult to manage, and I'll let you guess what that is. So, real quick, and to make sure I'm just not just talking head to you, because I cannot see you, you can only see me, but I want to make sure you're still alive and that you're still, awake. So when you think about shaping the new normal, and you think about current business, new business, and the way of working, we can think about what has already changed and what still needs to be changed, because right now we're about 12 months in, so it's a great time to also take stock of what still needs to be changed. So, are you ready? Have your fingers on the keyboard or on your iPad, and think about what has already changed in your business, in the current business, right? And here, just some examples of a company I've worked with: e-signatures, document sharing, new client onboarding, employee onboarding, the virtual cafes, I think they have forced more empowerment, working from home. We've seen more innovation and better work-life balance. Just kind of get your mind going really quickly. So, in the chat, what has changed already in your business? Virtual due diligence, excellent, Michael, thank you. The mindset, oh, Nicoletta, it's slow, okay. E-signatures, yes, automated processes, virtual hiring, global reach of knowledge, Pearl, say a little bit more. E-signature, document sharing, so very similar to what I have up here. Alexis, punctuality, that's a good one, okay. Virtual bid closing, client events, remote training, yes, Tristan, we're practicing that every day. Very flexible, virtual, home office. All right. Lots of things. Digital onboarding of clients. So that's a good one because I think a lot of people worried about digital audits, Idri. Very good. Stakeholder engagement, e-recruitment. Oh my God, this is fantastic. You'd almost say, do we need to go back? End-to-end procurement. All right. Corporate information share. Robert, I'm not sure that's a midnight calls. Is that, I guess that's a change. KISS flow, that sounds interesting, Renee. Ricardo, why is it easier to schedule meetings? Augmented reality, interesting. Oh my God. Dennis, more inclusive, I guess, because it's easier to join. Yeah, 24 hours working. I'm afraid that's one of the downsides of all of this. Absolutely. No printing drawings. I don't know what that means, Kartiki. Yeah, Bernard, less travel. I think there's now too little travel. What is that noise?
Which noise?
Who's coming in here? More 12 hours working. Oh my God. Less coffee talk. Yes, Federico, that's a downside. Shorter meetings, Chris. I'm not so sure. More to the point, all right. BHA, I don't know what that means. First generation blockchain, my God, this is great, Jasper. Wow, a lot. Much shorter meetings. Well, Carla, we need to learn from you because most of my meetings get to be scheduled for an hour. So isolated feelings. Yes, some of you are also highlighting some of the things of the changes that are not good. Lack of creativity, fewer informal discussions, less socializing, square eyes. You're getting tired of looking at that. So there's positives, but there's also a lot of negatives, different markets. All right, guys, great. This is awesome. And again, please make sure you send the chat to everybody, not just to the panelists. Surya, Zoom fatigue, I am with you. And I started at 6:30 this morning, so I can really feel it. Any new business? What kind of new business? New products, new services, new business models? What has happened in that regard? AI, Glenn, okay. Face shield, Siobhan, all right. Digital learning is booming, absolutely. Contract tracing, remote services, e-commerce going up. Yes, Amazon is going through the roof. Absolutely. SR, I hope you have it as well. Again, make sure your chat goes to everybody. Kaufman, why deeper look into M&A? Because there may be some cheap opportunities, I guess is what you're meaning there. Aline, what is new? New business. Blogs, podcast, all right. Biometric online log. My God, what does that mean, KK? Customer journey, 50-50. Yeah. Higher household electricity use, that's good for some companies. Live streaming e-commerce, AI in decision making, all right. So I guess what I'm seeing here is a lot of you are finding better ways to get the products and services across in an e-commerce way. That's good. More delivery companies. Supply chain efficiency, why? Yes, new businesses, Uber Eats. But what I meant when I said new business is new business for you. What new business ideas have come up in your area? Sanitizer business, for sure. Right? So think about it, have you used this time, these last 10 to 12 months, to really think through what new products you can sell? COVID test kits, yes. I mean, if you're in that business, you're in good shape. All right, so that's something to really think about. As well, savings, there's a lot of savings. Virtual property viewings, yes. Digital entertainment. Okay, Krajina, if I say it correctly, redefining the value proposition. I think that's one of the keys that I'm looking for. Are you really connecting and providing value in a different way? New investment tools, yes, very good. New medical equipment. I don't know what concentrators are, Lena. Remotely, yes, a lot of remote. But again, less offices to rent. Yeah, that's a sad one. That's for sure, Bernard. Right? So maybe rents are going down. But again, the idea is here to think through what new businesses you can really bring in. And of course, on the new way of working, we already discussed quite a bit of that as well. I hope, and this is a simple chart, guys. You can use this simple chart to do the first row, like I just did with your team. Kind of take stock. What have we done over the last 10, 12 months in terms of what I would call here shaping the new normal? And then I hope you also see this as an opportunity to use your team to say, okay, now that we have this experience, what else needs to be changed in the current business? What else needs to be changed in terms of, new business ideas that we have? And what else can we do in the way of working? I think this is quite an opportune time to take stock of what have you done and what more can you do, both for you personally, for your team, and for the business. All right, so that's kind of the first part of what I wanted to share with you. But I want to challenge you a little bit more than this, because there have been many changes and the story keeps changing and it's not the same everywhere in the world. The question is now really from a leadership perspective, right? I always say that a leader has to create value beyond expectations through his or her people. And I hope what we have seen and already wrote about, there's more empowerment than in the past. And there's more value creation, I think, in a lot of businesses because of there being more empowerment. So the question is, as you go through this, how do you keep creating value as a leader in the new normal? Doesn't mean you have to do it personally, but through the people that work for you. And, when I used to teach this stuff and had people think about this, you want to set kind of the environment, the pre-COVID environment, whether it's around blockchain, artificial intelligence, the gig economy, the e-commerce economy, whether it's Uber, Airbnb, Zalando, the trade wars, new ways of value creation on YouTube, very interesting things going on there with gaming. I think gaming, by the way, is one of the hot topics for the future in education as well. The Brexit, and then, of course, the new generations connecting in very different ways. I think all those challenges are still there. Sometimes they get a bit moved out of the way because of dealing with COVID. But they're all still there. And they also then offer opportunities. So I was really happy to see that some of you seem to be taking on blockchain, or at least in early versions of blockchain, to think through how you can use that in your business. So let's ask a bit more deeper question. So if you think about COVID innovations, all the ones that you wrote in the chat, the ones that I mentioned in terms of IMD and that wonderful Dutch restaurant. Actually, I don't know if the restaurant is wonderful, but it was a wonderful innovation, right? The question then is, are these breakthroughs? So this is a yes-no question. Are these breakthroughs? I realize it's a leading question. Everybody's saying no. Nobody for yes, okay. Lulu. Why do you say yes? Tristan, yes. Lena is even saying temporary solutions. All right, Pearl is more like a professor, yes and no. The constraints, right tools at the right time, excellent. Some yes. Dennis, which one is yes? Thank you, Carlo. Massively accelerated trend that would have happened anyhow. I'm not sure about the last part of the sentence, but it's a massively, accelerated trend for sure. Okay. It's adaptability, innovative, yeah. Support, yes. All right, very good. Great comments. I appreciate it. And my answer is also no. For me, these are innovations. And a lot of it, like you guys said, it's acceleration. Alexis, yes, if I had known, I would have bought Zoom stock with all my money in January, and I would be retired by this point, and someone else would be doing this presentation. That's for sure. All right. So I would say these are not breakthroughs. So what then are the breakthroughs? So what are the real breakthroughs that we have seen over these last 10, 12 months? Vaccine, okay. So I don't, yeah, but tell me, what is the mindset shift? eRNA, yes, absolutely. Implementation, yes. Virtual meetings, work from home, anywhere, accessing, very good, Lena, yeah. MS Teams, what already existed, right? RE, breakthrough of old technology, even the most change resistance. I get reduction of arrogance. Thank you, Glenn. That's a good one. Say a little bit more about what you mean by that, Glenn. Edgar, make sure you send the chat to all people, not just to the panelists. Social distance accepted. Yes. Mindset change, depersonalization. The world is working together. Very nice. Climate impact. Yes, we realize the social is important. Rethinking our entire system, punctuality, Takeshi, that's an interesting one. Robots in accounting, all right. Digitalization in old people homes, that's an interesting one, Chris. I'm not sure what you mean. I don't know how we go from all this to veganism, maybe more awareness of the world climate, I guess maybe you mean. ESG, Trump leaving office, all right. I guess it took us 35 minutes to get Trump in here. Change of lifestyle, yes. Work-life balance, absolutely. Arrogance change, moving from yes, thank you, Glenn. Yes, absolutely. We're all teachers, thank you, Barnaby. Leaders are listening. Okay, respecting animals, thank you, Aline.
Robert.
Yes, Stefan, what are some of the questions?
Yes, if you want. So Surya asked 2 questions. What is the true process that can be applied to explore new areas of growth? And what are the key ingredients required to maintain momentum in a complex and highly uncertain landscape?
Fantastic. Those are 2 great questions. I'm going to come back to the second one later, Surya. The first one is, it's simply using the chart that I showed you before and using the team to think through what can we actually do that's positive and change the business model is one way to do that. The other one is use your connections now to different parts of an ecosystem, which are more easily accessible, and work with partners to develop new value propositions. Okay, we've done that also with our partners as well. But great questions. But to keep the momentum, that's probably one of the questions I want to address here, assuming that the momentum is there. So when I think about what the real breakthroughs are, besides the COVID vaccine, which clearly, of course, is a huge breakthrough to do that in such a short amount of time, where normally it takes 3 to 4 years, and now it was done in less than 1 year. So that's quite amazing. But when I think about it, for me, the real breakthrough is speed of implementation. Because all of these things that I showed you, they already existed. Zoom already existed. Actually, my wife, who does a lot of coaching, had been telling me about Zoom, but I'd kind of ignored her in that particular area because I was doing all this face-to-face teaching. So who needs Zoom? I wish I'd listened to her earlier. But I think when you look at the speed of implementation, also the acceptance of change, or even embracing change, the engagement of people to make it happen, the personal care that we have seen from leaders stepping up in making this change in the way in which they interact, the way they lead their teams, the way they bring it up, and the level of trust, in some sense, forced to be more trust. For me, these are, really the big breakthroughs. When you think about it, how often over the past 5, 10 years have you used the word resistance to change? Right? Absolutely. I listen to my wife. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. It's one of the keys to a successful marriage. But these, for me, are the real breakthroughs. Because so often we talk about resistance to change. People don't like change. People can't change. Can't teach an old dog new tricks. You've probably heard that saying. People are not engaged. People are not behind it. People don't care. I mean, for me, these are really the amazing ones. The other ones are the tools to create meaningful change, and they're clearly, incredibly important. And Surya, when you talk about how do you keep the momentum, right? You really need to think through what are the lessons from this page. Is it just, just in parentheses, is it just that the crisis really, Leon, that's a concern. Is it temporary? Is it just that the crisis kind of forced us to do all of this? Or maybe some of our assumptions about change have been wrong. Or if some of our assumptions about people wanting to change have been wrong, right? And maybe, there's more empowerment, forced empowerment in some senses, because we can't see everybody. We have to trust that they are working. We have to trust that even when we don't see them, they're doing it as well. Yes, Ashima, adversity is the mother of invention, but hopefully it's also the mother of change as we go through. So if you are following my train of thought and you say these are the real breakthroughs, then the question, of course, what made these breakthroughs possible? So what made these breakthroughs possible? Desperation, okay. No time to procrastinate, necessity, urgency, yeah. Consistency, fear, greed, frustration, survival, absolutely. No better choice. Survival, mass psychosis. Okay, Leon? That's an interesting one, Chris. Time to think. What do you mean by that? A willingness. Barnaby, how do we get a flattening of hierarchies? Lack of alternatives, crisis. So lots of interesting ideas. Removal of previous barriers, yes. First mover advantage. Jonas, very nice. Inspired leadership, absolutely. I think you probably have seen who the real leaders are over the last 10 to 12 months. The burning platform that everybody could see. I would even challenge you a little bit on that, right? Because I can tell you it took a while for this to be seen as a burning platform. Because in December of 2019, we already knew COVID was coming. But January, February, March, I think many of us were talking about it's like a flu. There's some temporary change, not a big breakthrough. So I think that really that notion that this is a crisis wasn't immediate. It took a little while to get going.
Robert?
Okay. Thank you, Leon. Yes, Stefan.
Yes. Do you want to answer two questions? Okay, so
that was the first question. Okay.
Okay.
Yes to the first question.
Okay. Can we quickly articulate what we mean with breakthrough versus regular innovation?
Yeah. So breakthrough is to really engage in a radically different way of doing things than was done in the past, right? And the technology enables that. But for me, that's what the breakthrough is the speed of the change. It's a radical departure from the past. Of course, in that sense, working from home is as well. But then you want to think through what makes that possible. And maybe part of the answer is also on the next slide. Because when I think about the foundations for breakthroughs, right, I think about things like the culture that existed before, the investment we made in people before, how we engaged people, how we took care of them. And in terms of the innovations, another way of answering that question, a lot of them were already there. Zoom was there. E-signatures already existed. Virtual meetings already existed. So we actually took some pre-existing pockets of excellence and then adapted them at a much larger scale and implemented them much faster. But it means we had to be able to get people to engage in this change. Because a lot of you said, it was the stress as well that made this happen and the crisis. But in a crisis, one of two things can happen. People can be paralyzed by fear, but they can also be excited to do something different. And I think a lot of it for me depends on the culture that existed in the company before, how engaged people are, how much respect they showed for people, because now you want people to go the extra mile, not just from a fear perspective, but also from the perspective of really making meaningful change. I couldn't track all the chat going on at the same time. So if you have a question, pose it and then in the chat, and then Stefan will pick it up. You had a second question, Stefan?
Yes, Elena said not to be pedantic, but can you help distinguish where innovation stops and breakthrough start?
That's a gray zone. So Helena, that would be a difficult one. I just wanted to separate out, concrete changes, whether that's Zoom in terms of technology or working from home, like some of you, I think, in the chat said it's not really an innovation. Some people did it in the past, to more the large-scale implementation of these changes. So, Helena, that's probably the part that I think is the biggest difference between innovation and the breakthroughs that I am talking about. Breakthroughs in the way we lead, the breakthroughs in the way in which we collaborate, and like Kartashov is saying right now, the shift of mindset from command and control to engage and align. And yes, Tristan, I can only see the top part. Breakthrough for one company can be an innovation for another, I guess is what you're saying. So yeah, that makes sense. But Helena, I hope that answers your question. Do I have a beautiful, clear boundary? No, absolutely not. That would be too difficult as well. But I just wanted to kind of shift your thinking about, what's really the biggest change. That's how I'm using the concepts of innovation and breakthrough today. Gracina, you're mentioning my favorite concept, serendipity. We'll have to come back to that another time. We can do an hour just on serendipity. And, the reason I bring this up, if you go back to the example I gave you on innovation in the virtual world, we ended with this picture. But if you combine it with the previous slide, I think what's going to make innovation also a success in the virtual world is if first we take the time to make sure we have this environment of trust. Because innovation is a lot about people being willing to share their crazy ideas and different ways of doing without being afraid of being ridiculed. That's what I tried to indicate with that little picture at the bottom of the person falling backwards, kind of this trust exercise. And the real challenge still is that middle picture. How do we get energy exchange, building on energy in this virtual world? That one I haven't really figured out. I mean, it's fun for me to see all the chat coming by, but that's really different than us being together and building on each other's ideas, whether it's a discussion about innovation versus breakthrough or how to, really bring these concepts now further into the future. So the subtitle of the session was, how do you achieve genuine agility and resilience, bring stability in your organization, and turn crisis into an opportunity? So the slide, 2 slides back, what it's basically saying, what it means for me is, if you want to be able to take advantage of a crisis, you need to have a healthy culture before the crisis arrives. Because if you try to do those things and after the crisis arrives, you can't. You will be stuck with whatever culture you have. So the more you build up the same culture, the trust in the culture, the safety in the culture, then I think your chances of really using a crisis to your advantage to create innovations and breakthroughs goes up dramatically. So it's not about stability in terms of just keep doing things the way they are, but to provide that platform that enables you to respond in adaptive and agile ways to a changing environment. So that's the notion for me, for breakthroughs, you need to have the organization prepared. It also goes to my favorite definition of luck, because, some people and some organizations seem to be luckier than others. But my definition of luck is where preparedness meets opportunity. So what I'm talking about is, how do you always have your organization prepared to respond to maybe futures they had not anticipated? And I think that's what I meant with the preparation in terms of culture, engagement, and trust that you build into the organizational fabric before a crisis like COVID hits. So that's the idea behind that. So any questions coming in, Stefan? Any other questions before I also want to take the opportunity of having you all here to tell you a little bit more about how I use these ideas in the Breakthrough Program for senior executives. You can either do it in the chat. Just remember, you have about 10 words to formulate your question because I cannot see more. Stefan, go ahead.
Yeah. And on the Q&A as well is great because people can vote and the best question will go up and then we can use. So one is from an anonymous person. How do we better organize ourselves in a large traditional function silo, into bracket, based organization to scale and implement the innovation effectively while we keep running the existing business? Hypothesis, the solution now go across functions and are only implemented successfully when we manage to consider the entire value stream.
Yes. Wow, that is a fantastic question. And I'm sure my answer will fall short of fully addressing it. But 2 comments on that. I hear a lot of talk about breaking down silos. I'm not a fan of breaking down silos. I actually love silos. What are silos? Silos are the accumulation and integration of deep knowledge in particular areas, whether it's finance or a particular business area, what have you. What we do want to see is much better sharing across the organization of that knowledge in business relevant ways. And that is why I think, in addition to the silos, we need matrix management. Now, most of you probably hate me for saying that because most of you don't like, matrix. But in essence, if you look at the original concept of the matrix, it's to bring knowledge and experience together where it is most needed. So I think if you can combine the benefits of the silo with linking them to concrete business problems, then you have real opportunities for meaningful changes in organization, innovations in organizations, and that kind of collaboration, I think, would be very much a breakthrough in most organizations. So I hope that addresses a little bit of your question. Stefan, do we have more questions? Or?
Yes. How can we reduce the fear of similar virus or disease in the future?
Say that again?
Sorry. How can we reduce the fear of similar virus or disease in the future?
Well, I appreciate that you say reduce. We should always have a healthy amount of fear, which hopefully leads us to healthy practices in making sure that not too many come our way. The other answer to that question is, I think we have to be ready for it. I think these were the predictions already 10, 15 years ago that one of these things would happen. And if you listen to Bill Gates, who was quite, advanced in these kinds of things, he said it's going to be part of the future. So what I'd rather have you do, rather than be scared, is to really take the lessons from the last 12 months. How can we as an organization be better prepared? How do you have a culture that is adaptive to change, where we trust in people, build on their ideas, and keep these options open? But I think I would keep a healthy amount of fear and create as adaptive as possible, connections. Renee, I'm not saying paranoia, just a healthy level of fear.
Okay, someone asking, can you repeat the definition of lucky companies?
Okay. Lucky companies, lucky people. Luck is where preparedness meets opportunity. So in many ways, right, when I was studying, I didn't know exactly where I was going to end up. But you want to acquire a number of skills, a set of competencies, and a basis of knowledge that then puts you in a position when various opportunities come your way to take advantage of them. So a lot of people think luck, people are just sitting in their chair and something falls in their lap and they're lucky. No, I think the people who are well prepared, who make the investment in training, knowledge acquisition, skill acquisition, are the ones much more likely to get lucky because they can take advantage of opportunity.
One last that I have in the Q&A is, during COVID, there was one of the largest attack on IT security. What about increased IT security and continuity to manage risk of increased dependency on digital in our businesses?
Well, that's a simple one. Yes. I think some people have been trying to take advantage of this time actually in negative ways or even criminal ways. So I think cybersecurity is a super hot topic, and so hot topic that we actually recently hired a faculty member onto the IMD faculty who is purely focused on cybersecurity. So please check her out. Oiku is her name, and we will be doing things on that. It's not my area of expertise, other than saying like it is a super important topic because we are getting attacked. When I hear about another company I worked with, they have like 100,000 attacks a day. Yeah, it's a crazy world in that particular sense. All right, maybe I take a few minutes. I see some people signing off, but I also, of course, want to do a little marketing for my program, for this great program, Breakthrough Program for Senior Executives, building on the notion around breakthroughs that I was talking about before. And this is a program, and I want to introduce it maybe in a different way than we usually do. It challenges 4 assumptions. What is the role of senior executives? Because it's a program for senior executives. What does it mean to be a high potential? Yes, Leon, that's one of my favorite sayings. Nobody has been able to foresee the future. And my other favorite saying is, it's the trouble with the future is that it keeps changing. And that's why this program is great, because it helps you prepare for different futures. And also we need to rethink what is strategy, and then the concept of breakthrough. So Helena, stay on. We have another definition of breakthrough also. And when I think about the role of senior leaders, one of the questions I really like to ask them is, what's left of your leadership if we take your business knowledge and your functional knowledge away? And I think that's a key question in terms of, are you ready? Are you making your team ready to deal with uncertain futures? Are you getting them ready to be lucky in the future? And clearly this is a lot about people skills, trust skills, building trust, building the team. And clearly I'm not saying that we take the business and functional knowledge away. I'm just, as a thinking exercise, think about what that would mean. What capabilities do you have left? Also, I think you want to rethink this whole notion of high potentials. Somehow we think high potentials are the future. I think actually senior executives are a great part of the future, and I think we have a lot on this call. Now I can't see you, but raise your hand. I think what we don't do enough in organizations is do after action reviews of the things that went wrong, to keep learning from that, or even after action reviews of the things that went right, whether that's mishandling customer relationship, promoting the wrong person. And my guess is, of the people on here, all of you have done this. I have done this. And potential for me is about capturing the learning in a way that others can benefit from, so we don't make those same mistakes either. Okay. So that, I think, makes the assumptions about potential quite limiting. The other one is strategy. I think too often when we think about strategy, we get some consultants with the top team. They invite a whole bunch of ideas. They give project leaders, and then people get frustrated because they're not part of the strategy. If, however, we really engage people broadly in these exercises and we get people to work together, then you can get also the commitment and the change willingness that we were talking about before. And again, so if we start strategy as an engaging process, we're also much more likely to be ready to change in the future. So it starts already there at the strategy and vision creation. All right, breakthroughs. Breakthroughs, I love this picture. If only we could look there. I'm going to give you a very simple question, okay? And that is, who invented the light bulb?
It's okay.
All right, so everybody knows who invented the light bulb, right? Sometimes I get Tesla because people think I'm asking a trick question, but nobody is doing that as well. Did Edison really invent the light bulb? Well, his name is on the patent, that much is for sure. But when you look at Edison, what is very interesting is, of course, this very interesting saying, I have not failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. I love that saying. But if you look actually at what he did, okay, he lived for 84 years and he had 1,093 patents to his name. Okay, so that is more than 10 patents a year, or like one a month, basically, if he had started at age 0, including the phonograph, incandescent light bulb, all right, and one of the earliest cameras. Is this really possible? Can this man really have invented that? I would actually venture that the real breakthrough was something else. The real breakthrough, I think, was the way in which he organized his invention machine, his innovation machine. Now, this is a lot of text. We'll go step by step. But he set a stretch goal, a small invention every 10 days and a big one every 6 months. Okay? So he's very good at setting stretch goals. He used a large, diverse staff with very diverse people, machinists, scientists, craftsmen, laborers. They called the muckers. He was one of the first people to use cross-functional team. Then he divided them into 10, 20 small teams. They're working on prototypes, working very quickly. I think he was doing agile teams way before it became popular, in the last couple of years. Okay. Then he had laboratories and R&D facilities of more than 500 people. So he was one of the first people to ever scale up R&D. Okay. And then he really, was one of the first ones who really used R&D, to really revolutionize the process of technological research. And finally, by doing this, he had improvements in the quality of life for everybody around him, individual, team, societal, and organizational impact. For me, that was the real breakthrough that Edison introduced, is that way of working, that way of engaging. And many of us are just catching up to all of these things today when we think agility is a fantastic concept. At least it's one of the most overused words today as we go forward. So when you think about it, and this from a senior executive leadership perspective is, do you need to have the idea, or do you need to make sure that there is an environment where ideas emerge? And clearly my preference is for the second. And that goes back to, breakthroughs come from having created an environment in which people feel safe. You bring the talent together in meaningful ways. And then, of course, that also makes you adaptive to crisis. The way we then address that is, we look at you, what is driving you, what are your leadership challenges, how are the organizational issues in your area, and what's changing in the external environment. We make you think, like that question that I posed to you before, what is your leadership beyond business and functional knowledge? Are you really using the full potential of your people as you go through? Are you creating a high performance culture in your business? And in that sense, are you able to make breakthroughs in interesting times? So that just gives you a very quick overview here as well. I think Stefan will share the slides. You can then also see how we break that down. We start by looking at you and your team to take a look at where you come from. We give you an opportunity to explore new possibilities with all kinds of fascinating sessions. And then, of course, we have you actually work in the program for 2 full days on creating breakthroughs in your organization. So hopefully what you've seen in this presentation is that we really take the time to make you the kind of creator, or if I can say it, the Edison of creating breakthroughs in your organization. Been a phenomenal program from an energy perspective for me in terms of the participants, very diverse, very exciting as well. And that way in this program, I think we really live up to what IMD stands for, is to challenge what is, inspire what could be, to develop leaders who transform organizations and contribute to society. With that, I'm going to leave it here. And of course, if you want to know more about BPSE, we have Stefan also on the call. Please write to him. But I see a lot of people leaving, so I wanted to make sure that you had the full picture. But I'm happy to stay around for questions if you have those. Stefan, do we have any more questions?
Yes. So who will be accountable CEOs or teams created and supported by CEOs in sense of akimbo teams diverse? I don't know. Maybe it's a mistake here. I didn't understand the last sentence. So beside good feelings, is there any other measure to sense if an idea will be a breakthrough?
I think whether an idea is a breakthrough or not is hard to anticipate in the present. What I would very much recommend is that you don't put all your eggs in one basket, and that you much more think about a portfolio of opportunities that you want to introduce, so that you can see what works, what doesn't work, and you can also quickly upgrade and improve what you are doing. So I think pilots and experimentation are really great. I would never recommend to a company to bet the whole company on one idea because you think it's going to be a breakthrough.
Okay, so then in the beginning, maybe you answered it partially, that why would working from home be a breakthrough innovation? There was already the technology.
Right. So I think the technology is not the innovation. The innovation is that we make it possible now for that working from home to truly happen, whether that's through e-signatures, document sharing, making sure that you have those connections where sometimes due to issues around legal issues or GDPR or confidentiality, the real quality of the working from home was quite limited because of those restrictions. And now to have work to really make it meaningful so you can truly do all of those activities from home, I think that's a real breakthrough.
Okay, so thank you to you, Robert. And no, I think there is, no other question in the Q&A as well.
Well, then we should not extend things longer than necessary. Really appreciate all of your attention. And clearly, I also hope to see some of you in this wonderful program, Breakthrough Program for Senior Executives. And don't hesitate to contact Stefan. He's fantastic in helping you see whether you fit or not. Guys, have a great weekend. And have a positive mindset. And like I said, good luck.